Hey, this is Mike from the Run Testers. This is the Garmin Fenix 8, the 51mm AMOLED version to be precise. Now myself, Nick and Kieran have all been testing this version of the new Fenix over the past few months, and what we're going to do in this video is share you our experiences and thoughts on the new Fenix. We're going to also get into whether we think this is a worthy upgrade from the Fenix 7, 7 Pro, also the Epix and Epix Pro, which effectively is going to be replaced by the new Fenix line. We'll also look outside of Garmin's collection as well too and see how it compares to the competition. So, is this the complete running outdoor navigation watch that you need to buy? Let's get into it. So let's start with the all-important price, and the Fenix 8 costs £949 in the UK or $999 in the US, and that is the starting price. The Fenix 7 Pro in comparison starts at £649 or $799, so that's quite a leap in price. It's worth talking about the Epix Pro as well here, which costs £829 or $999, so that's cheaper than the Fenix 8 in the UK and about around the same price in the US. The key design changes from the Fenix 7 is that you now get the Fenix 8 with either a solar charging display or an AMOLED display, with the new Fenix replacing the Epix range going forwards. There's the same 3 case size options as the Fenix 7 and 7 Pro for the AMOLED model, with just the 2 sizes for the solar version. That's because Garmin believes a 42mm Fenix 8 solar would become too thick with its new solar charging display technology. Garmin has also introduced new leak-proof buttons on the Fenix 8 to make it better suited for recreational diving, and also adds a brighter and clearer flashlight to the latest Fenix. On the features front, Garmin builds the new Fenix on its latest software platform that sees changes to the user interface, including a temporary touchscreen mode, and is one new thing here that can't be rolled back to older Fenix models. It's added a speaker and microphone to let you take calls, talk to your phone's smart assistant, command your watch by voice, and also record geotagged voice notes. The core running features remain largely the same as the Fenix 7 Pro, with multiband GPS in tow alongside the Gen 5 Elevate heart rate sensor that appeared on the 7 Pro as well too. That features alongside the same training and analysis modes. You're also getting the same mapping and navigation modes, including a new dynamic round-trip routing one where you need to abruptly change course. Garmin has also introduced new strength training features that offer plans and programs to follow and to help runners match up strength workouts to give running performance a boost. In terms of battery life, we've broken down how the Fenix 8 range fares and compares to the Fenix 7 Pro, Epix Pro, where there are some wins and losses across scenarios.
Tested the Garmin Fenix 8 up against a range of watches, including the Garmin Enduro 3, the Garmin Enduro 2, the Apple Watch Ultra 2. I also used a Polar H10 chest strap for benchmarking of the heart rate performance. I ran everything from London City 5Ks to the tree-covered New Forest Marathon and the Lake District Ultra. I used a range of modes from the max accuracy GPS mode right down to the max battery mode that sacrifices some of the accuracy of the GPS for battery life. I also did lots of runs using the auto select mode that automatically finds the best settings for accuracy and battery life. Now overall, I found the GPS and the heart rate mainly reliable, though not infallible in both areas. The Garmin Fenix 8 GPS locks routes as well as any watch I've tested, though it suffered a few wobbles when I went through that kind of heavy tree cover in the New Forest. Overall total distances landed well within the margin for error though on those official race routes. I was relatively happy with the real-time pace whilst I was using it. When it comes to the heart rate, for most of your easy, steady efforts, the optical sensor here will do a solid job. Though, as I mentioned, it's not infallible though, and if you're doing laser-focused heart rate training with lots of intervals or want more accurate insights for racing, you're going to still need a chest strap to get the most out of all of that data that the Fenix serves up, but that is generally speaking optical heart rate for you. Now the thing that impressed me most was the staying power of the Fenix 8. I tested this side by side with the Enduro 3, and at times I found there was little to choose in overall usage of the device when I had the Fenix set to raise to wake settings. The average battery burn overnight was between 1 to 2%, only slightly higher than the Garmin Enduro 3. Over a 24-hour period with no runs or GPS usage, the Fenix 8 dropped 8%, the Enduro shed 3%, a 90-minute run in normal power mode with always on burned 3%, a 3-hour marathon in max accuracy mode, always on burned 6%. During my 8-hour 5 Valleys Ultra normal power mode with Sat IQ on and the always screen on, the Fenix 8 burned 15%, while the Garmin Enduro with those same settings burned 14%. For general usage, with the always on screen turned off, I got 15 days with around 8 hours of GPS runtime before I needed to charge. Super impressed with that for an AMOLED watch. Really kind of almost nullifies the idea that you're going to have battery anxiety for an AMOLED screen. So the second thing I'm going to say, it's obvious, the Fenix 8 AMOLED is a great looking watch straight out of the box. It's big, rugged, shiny and classically Fenix. I'm a fan of the silver titanium frame and the orange flashes from the strap and the buttons. I like the colour band, but I prefer a nylon strap. It's a heavy old watch as well, this. Not one for the dainty wristed, but that is classic Fenix stuff. The new AMOLED touchscreen display is simply stunning. It's brilliantly responsive and it's easy to read in all conditions. I found the raise to wake also springs the screen to life rapidly when you lift your arm. I really liked that you can use that to eke out more battery life by switching off the always on mode without impacting really the usability. That punchy screen brings all your daily recovery, training and health stats to life, as well as elevating the Fenix 8's mapping and navigation tools to a whole other level. I tested the Garmin Enduro 3's MIP display side by side while using this one on the Five Valleys Ultra, and it's much easier to follow the routes on the Fenix than the Enduro 3. Now, I wouldn't buy the Fenix 8 specifically for these, but the additions of the mic and the speaker for calls and for playing music out loud is quite cool. It feels like a step on for Garmin when it comes to the smartwatchification of its core running watches. It really feels like they're quickening the pace to close the gap on Apple and the other classic smartwatches when it comes to things that you can do outside of kind of run tracking. Though the Fenix is still nowhere near as capable as the other major smartwatches. Still, the voice commands tool is clever, though you can't summon Siri. You have to tap a few buttons to get there to do the voice activation, which isn't really that much faster overall or easier than doing it manually, but you can see where they're going with this. I think the voice notes tools are pretty cool as well. I've always wanted a way to record those thoughts and ideas that pop into your head halfway round a 100-kilometer ultra. You always think you're going to remember those ideas that often come when you're running, but they go as quickly as they come. And I love the fact you can now capture them from the wrist. Now, on the software side, I personally think that Garmin has made some positive changes to the user interface here to make it easier to navigate to the settings menus or launch into your preferred workout and tweak the settings right before you set off on a run. When you hit the top right button on Garmin, before it would take you to your list of sport modes, now you land on a screen with activities and a couple of pinned preferred sport modes there above a list of other tools where you can go in and customize things like maps, phone, music, etc., all those things. It's another nod that Garmin is moving more towards the smartwatch direction, and I think it actually simplifies access to those things. The Fenix 8 is probably the best running navigation tool in the business now. Navigation smarts have been boosted as well here with the Fenix 8. So in addition to the lovely routable offline maps and neat tools like next fork routing, backtrack, time to destination estimates, you can now also customize the map layers and access dynamic round-trip routing. I also love the fact that you can load a route and use Climb Pro, which is a really good tool on Garmin to see the climbs that you've got left to eat on that particular run, the profile of your current climb and how far it is before you will hit the summit. I tested the nav skills of the Fenix 8 during the Five Valleys Ultra in the Lake District up against the Enduro 3, and this big bright screen definitely makes a difference here too. The off-course alerts that you got as well also saved me a couple of times whilst following my route on race day.
So when it comes to the likes of the Garmin Fenix 8, a quick one will be the design. I really like the design. It's very similar to previous models like the Epix Pro, but I really like the AMOLED screen on the Fenix 8, and I do like the new watch faces Garmin has brought to it. The new user interface, I think, makes a slightly better use of the AMOLED screen as well. So all around, I found it a very good looking and enjoyable watch to wear 24/7, and with a nylon band, it's not too heavy either. Like, it's still a big and heavy watch, the 51mm one, but yeah, I did enjoy wearing it all the time, and I do like the look of it a lot. Also a big fan of the accuracy of this watch. Like, it's not unexpected that the GPS accuracy is very good because Garmin's dual band GPS or the auto select mode has been very good for several generations of watches now, and that's very much the case with the Fenix 8. I've done several races with it. I've used it in tricky conditions in terms of trail runs in the center of town, and yeah, the pacing is always very consistent and the overall distances are always very accurate. So GPS accuracy is certainly very good, and I've been using it in the auto select mode I think for almost the entire time I've been training with it, and haven't seen any kind of errors really at all with GPS. And actually the heart rate accuracy has also been great for me. Like, having connected the Fenix 8 to an external heart rate sensor for the bulk of the 6 weeks I've been testing it, and I just occasionally saw small errors, like in very sharp interval sessions the heart rate might not be quite as fast go up and down as a chest strap or a arm strap would be, but actually overall the accuracy has been spot on. My training analysis, info has been correct because the heart rate data from workouts has been going in really well. So I do think it's a very accurate heart rate sensor, this latest Gen 5.1 from Garmin. Might struggle a bit more now as we head into the colder months when optical sensors aren't quite so good, but across the board accuracy has been great from the Fenix 8. And although you kind of expect that from such an expensive watch, especially Garmin one with their great GPS, it's good to have that real sense of reliability on your wrist, that all your data coming in is very accurate. Battery life has also been amazing. Like, this is a big watch, the 51mm watch, but I did also test the Epix Pro 51mm for a long time. Like, you do get used to that size after a while, even with a skinny wrist like mine. The only time I think it's really annoying for me is when I'm going to sleep, and it's quite a big watch to have on at night. I think if you wear shirts, it's a bit more annoying because it's harder to get a shirt over this big watch. But if you do go for that big watch, you are going to get like 12 to 13 days of use I got out of this watch, which is more or less what Garmin lists it as. And that's, I think, really impressive because I've been using this hard. I've been a heavy user of the watch. I've had the always on screen enabled the whole time, notifications coming in. On a couple of the battery cycles I ran every single day, usually at least an hour, probably longer than that. And I was still getting 12, 13 days out of it, which is really good. And it's actually a bit longer than I was getting out of the Epix Pro, which was more like 10 days for me, I think, when I was using it regularly throughout the last year or so. So that's also got great battery life. This is, I think, even better. And it's actually only about kind of 4 or 5 days less than the Enduro 3 when I was testing them side by side. Like, Enduro 3 does last a fair bit longer, but that's a memory and pixel watch, really focused on battery life. This is an AMOLED watch. That battery life is pretty insane, I think. And then all the usual Garmin stuff is still amazing on this watch. You've got great navigation features. You've got really useful training analysis if you're going to dive into those stats, or you can just ignore them. That's kind of the thing you get with Garmin. All the features are there if you want them, and if you don't, it's very easy to hide them. You've got a new user interface here, which I think is fine. Like, doesn't really make a big difference to me compared to the old one, but all around the user experience is very much classic Garmin, which is to say it's very, very good.
Okay, so in terms of the good stuff with the Fenix 8, and I think overall in terms of tracking my runs, giving me very good GPS performance, offering very good mapping and navigation features, very kind of easy to kind of, glance at kind of training and analysis kind of features and insights as well too. That's all been very good for me. Very similar to what I've seen in previous Fenix watches. I think the big thing first and foremost that stood out for me has been the battery life. Now, I didn't have the experience of testing the 51mm version Epix Pro, which essentially this is kind of the upgrade to. Now, the battery life numbers with that watch and this watch don't entirely match up in all departments, but I think ultimately for me, the battery life has been very good. I've used a mixture of using it with a raise to wake mode, which I generally, when I start testing, that's how I use it. And then I get into kind of always on display mode as well too. I'm using features like kind of notifications. I do like have notifications on my watch. I'm obviously continuously monitoring things like heart rate. I'm also using the kind of best kind of GPS mode as well, that kind of multi-band mode as well in most occasions ultimately. And I've been using it with the Enduro 3 for most of my testing side by side. It came in less than the Enduro 3, but not by a huge amount. And this is a watch that can go for weeks. And as I said, whether you're using it with that raise to wake or that always on display mode. I think the other thing for me, and it's one I didn't think I'd be talking about, is actually Garmin bringing in strength training a little bit more into the kind of overall kind of experience of using the Garmin watch. And I think ultimately, making it feel a little bit more part of the process in terms of when you are training for a race or an event. I think the approach to strength training has been definitely a little bit mixed from Garmin, and I think outside of Garmin's range as well too. I think the changes here to allow you to build training plans, I think, ultimately, work a little bit like the kind of Garmin coach plans do, but for strength training, look at strength training in terms of how it can complement your running and, supporting that. I think that is a step in the right direction for Garmin. Now, is it the impeccable kind of strength training watch? Yeah, absolutely not. But I think in terms of, allowing you to build that into what you do on a kind of weekly basis, or even monthly basis, giving you plans to kind of work to as well too, and making them specific to running. I think that is a really positive move from Garmin. I think I'd like to see, being treated to see how it evolves over time with the Fenix 8 and the Garmin watches in general. Now, the last one for me is, and I hold my hands up, when Garmin kind of introduced the flashlight, I was a bit like, yeah, okay, great, yeah, a little bit gimmicky, but am I going to actually make good use of it? And I would say over time, since it's been introduced to Garmin watches, I have actually found it pretty useful, particularly now when it's getting a bit darker. If I'm going out for runs, if I've got to go and walk to the gym to do a kind of a treadmill session, have to go through a park, it's not very well lit. It's a little bit brighter this time now, which I think, is a good improvement in terms of that flashlight. And I have found over time I do use it a lot more. And I think particularly when I'm out running at night and, I do prefer a lot of the times running at night as well on my own. Having that extra source of light, not having to kind of get my phone out and just being able to do that from my watch, I think actually is a nice kind of little addition to the kind of experience of using a Garmin Fenix. And I do think it has been slightly improved in terms of that kind of overall luminance, that overall kind of brightness, giving you a bit of a better track in terms of using it. So yeah, as I said, you know, I thought it was a little bit gimmicky when Garmin introduced it. I have found over time it has been more useful to use. I do think it's slightly better in terms of, you know, how bright it is on the Fenix 8 compared to the previous watches. I think if you like the flashlight feature and liked it to be a little bit brighter, a little bit more powerful, then ultimately I think that's what you are going to get if you get the Fenix 8.
Dislikes then? Well, there's not a lot I don't like about the Fenix 8. It's just going to be a short list. This is the best Fenix Garmin has made to date. The price is probably one thing that I'm a little bit skeptical about. Is there enough here over the Fenix 7 to justify the price hike? Maybe you can argue there is for the AMOLED, I understand, with the screen and the new voice tools. Probably not for the solar MIP watches, even with that better battery life you're going to get from the improved solar tech. The other thing I didn't like, and this is maybe a minor gripe, but it's something I found on both the Fenix 8 and the Enduro 3 actually. When you go to load the stats from a recent activity, a recent run, it seems to take ages to load in. I've not noticed this lag elsewhere in terms of moving around the software and loading things in, but for that particular thing, it's notably long, a little bit frustrating. I'd also definitely prefer it to ship with a nylon band rather than the silicone band. You can obviously swap them out as well, but the nylon band for me is definitely worth it for the comfort and getting the better fit when it comes to sort of locking in the heart rate sensor on the wrist for boosted accuracy.
Comes on the dislikes. I've got minimal, very few dislikes of the actual product itself here. Like, you know, it's quite a big watch, but there is a range of sizes if you want to pick between them. If you don't like the AMOLED screen, you have the memory and pixel version. I think it's, you know, pretty much perfect. It's a very good watch. The big dislike is very much the price, and you know, the price went up a lot with this watch and it's really expensive now. And the big thing with Garmin is there are now several generations of excellent watches here with AMOLED screens or without AMOLED screens that give you a very similar core experience. So compared to using the Epix Pro regularly for the last year, I didn't really notice a big difference when using the Fenix 8, apart from the new watch face and the fact this is a black watch and I was using an Epix Pro white watch. So I'm not really going to use the mic and speaker a whole lot myself. Like, sometimes it was quite useful for voice commands. Like if I'm cooking, I do like to set timers sometimes with my voice commands, but for the most part, it's not something I was desperate to have on the watch, and the same goes for diving. I don't do a lot of diving. Those are good features to have if you need them, but otherwise, the watch is more or less unchanged. It's a huge price hike, you know, for features that I think will be a fairly niche appeal. So I do think, given how similar it is to past models, it makes more sense to look at those past models in sales or the price they are at, because the Fenix 8 is amazing, but it's a big price hike. And like I said, I don't think you're getting a massively different experience to previous models. And then one final dislike would be that I really think titanium and sapphire screens should be standard on the Fenix, like they are on the solar version of the watch now. I don't think you should be spending this amount of money and getting a steel watch with a Gorilla Glass screen with the base model of the Fenix 8 AMOLED. You know, titanium and sapphire across the board once we're hitting this kind of crazy price zone, because other brands are doing that as standard for a lot less.
So in terms of things I didn't absolutely love about my time with the Fenix 8, I don't think there's a huge amount which really stood out for me. I mean, I haven't absolutely loved the fact that it's, you know, more expensive than the Fenix 7 Pro significantly when you look at the pricing compared to even the kind of cheaper Fenix 8 model that you can get now. I think it's more to do with features that I think have been changed or maybe introduced that, you know, could they have been more useful? Could they have been better integrated in terms of experience? I think that's really kind of where I've sat with a few things. I think the biggest thing for me that's really stood out for me has been the user interface changes. Have they been for the better on the Fenix 8 compared to previous watches? I'm not entirely convinced just yet. You know, bringing the kind of, you know, the apps closer with the workout tracking screen, I think are the main thing for me. Does it make it a nice experience overall? I'm not sure at the moment, but, you know, crucially, a lot of the other kind of user interface elements have been retained. I think that's really important here. And generally, it is a watch that feels very similar to use compared to previous Fenixes, but there's a couple of, you know, areas where I think, you know, maybe didn't necessarily need to be changed. I think the other thing for me is obviously the introduction of these voice features. Have I used them on a regular basis? Not really. Obviously, we've seen some of these voice features on previous Garmin watches with the kind of ability to kind of summon your smart assistant, you know, make calls. They're not kind of things that I generally do, but that might be a feature that people want to use. But ultimately, you know, you have to have your phone with you, which I think most people will. But if you want it kind of that standalone quality to it, then you don't have that LTE functionality here still. on the Fenix 8 range to kind of, match those voice features. I think mainly the kind of voice notes feature, I think, I'd like to see that better integrated to the experience, maybe being, used better conjunction with, your workout activity summaries, making it a more compelling feature to use, which I think could be a good feature or voice feature to have on the Fenix watches, but I just don't feel like I used it in that way. I think ultimately the core run tracking kind of experience has been very similar to previous Fenix watches. I think obviously I was hoping for maybe a little bit of an improvement in the heart rate performance, but which is something I don't, I'm still going to wear a heart rate monitor chest strap if that's the kind of data I'm relying on for a run. But ultimately, I didn't really see those big improvements from previous watches. So yeah, more things that I think ultimately, I didn't hate, but I think ultimately I would think, they could be better integrated into the experience. Maybe did they need to be changed from the previous watches? That's really kind of a sat with the things that I've kind of, I've not absolutely loved my time with the Fenix 8.
Then, the Garmin Fenix 8 AMOLED is excellent. It's the most comprehensive, most capable running watch you can buy right now. You won't find more tracking, more training, more adventure tools, a better screen on any of its rivals. It's a really, really lovely watch to use, but it will cost you. And if you don't care about the shiny screen, the new UI, the new speaker, mic and voice tools, you can get largely the same tracking hardware and experience from the cheaper last-gen Fenix 7. If you don't care about those things and you're not bothered by the AMOLED display, the Enduro 3 is also arguably better value. I think if I had to choose, I'd go for the Enduro 3 over the Fenix 8. I just prefer that bigger battery life. I'm not too bothered about the screen. If smartwatch smart's your top priority, while the big bright screen, voice tools and interface tweaks move Garmin sports watch closer to the sportier smartwatches like the Apple Watch Ultra 2, the daily life tools and the third-party app selection on the Garmin's are still a way off Apple or Samsung's range. Those watches aren't a patch on the Garmin's broader sports tracking, but if you're after smartwatch skills, those are still your best bet. But overall, it's a capable device, the Fenix 8 AMOLED. It's beautiful to use. If money's no object and you want all of that, go for it. If you're looking for a bargain, I would look sort of older gens or even look at the Garmin Enduro 3.
So my verdict on the Fenix 8 AMOLED, I think this is the best sports watch you can get, but it's very similar to previous models of the Garmin, and we've got a very incremental improvement here compared to things like the Epix Pro that improves in ways that won't necessarily be a huge amount of use to lots of people. Like, I like the new design, I like the new buttons, they are quite nice to click, I think they're very tactile, but I'm not going to go diving with the watch, don't need the mic and speaker. The Epix Pro would make more sense. It's even got the flashlight, and then even the Epix 2 gives you a very similar user experience. You've only got one size of that watch, you don't have the flashlight, which is handy at times, but for the most part, the core experience of using a Garmin is very similar, and you're going to find that watch, I think I saw it, I think it was hundreds of pounds off the other day, like almost half price, and that's going to be a better deal, clearly. So I don't think there's a big need here to go and upgrade from the Epix 2 or the Epix Pro if you have those watches, unless you really want the larger size and the flashlight. The larger size is great if you've got the Epix 2, because you're getting a much longer battery life here, but the Epix Pro is certainly very similar. If you have got like a Fenix 6, then you are going to get a very clear upgrade with this watch, because I found the Fenix 6 a bit flaky on things like GPS, and in general the whole experience I think has been upgraded considerably since then, although that's still a very good watch. Like I say, I think this is the best watch you can buy if money is no object, but for most of us money is an object, and I would look at the previous models of the Garmin's for a better deal there. You've also got the Forerunner 965 as a very lightweight, really good sports watch that isn't as hardy as the Fenix line. Like, I have got a small scratch on the screen of the Forerunner 965 from general use, but that's a really cool watch as well. And then also, if you're looking at the memory and pixel watches, you can look at something like the Garmin Enduro 3 or the Fenix 7 Pro. They're all very good watches with the same kind of sports tracking experience, just with that memory and pixel display instead of an AMOLED one. Then looking at other brands, you've also got really good value options from Suunto now. So the Suunto Race and the Suunto Race S are great watches. Like, you don't get a lot of the features that are on Garmin's. You've got better maps on here, you've got better training analysis, you've got the smart features, but the Suunto Race and Race S really nail the core of what I look for in a sports watch, in that they've got a really nice AMOLED screen, so I really like that screen. They have got maps that work well, they have got really accurate GPS. I think they're one of the brands that match Garmin for accuracy, which is great, and they're really good watches to use. Like, there's some counterintuitive stuff about the way they do workouts and training analysis and stuff. It's not as good as on Garmin, I think, but it's not far off, and those watches are really good value. Like, Suunto's made a real statement with the pricing of those watches, I think, and they do offer a very good alternative to Garmin's at a lower price. If you want to look at something a bit different, you have got the Apple Watch Ultra, which I've been wearing at the same time as the Fenix for a lot of the testing. Like, obviously, the sports tracking isn't quite as good as Garmin's. There is more training analysis, though, on the Apple now, and I do like the way they do training load on Apple, where there's a lot of, you give a lot of the info yourself. Like, it's quite precise as a result, because it's not really affected by other factors, like how hard you worked, but you're going to get a lot more kind of analysis from Garmin, a lot more insights. You've got much better navigation tools on Garmin's, and obviously a lot better battery life. But it's a lot more expensive now than the Apple Watch Ultra, and it might help the Apple Watch Ultra's case now that Garmin's top model has been priced so highly. But yeah, overall, can't fault the watch itself. I think it's amazing. I think it's a brilliant watch. Certainly can fault the price. And yeah, you're probably going to find better value by looking at the Epix Pro in particular.
So my verdict on the Garmin Fenix 8, and I'm obviously talking about the most expensive 51mm AMOLED version in that kind of new Fenix range. So I think ultimately, you get what you pay for. This is, if you want the most feature-packed Garmin watch you can buy right now, this is what you're going to get from this watch. It is, kind of rugged, tough. There's a great vibrant AMOLED display there that crucially doesn't come at the expense of delivering those kind of big battery life numbers that we do associate with the Fenix range. And in terms of giving you the best of its kind of running, training, analysis, mapping, navigation, smartwatch features, that's all here in this watch. Now, in terms of how it compares to other Garmin watches, I think there's a few ways to slice this ultimately. I think we look at the Fenix 7 Pro compared to the Fenix 8. Now, obviously, you're not getting an AMOLED display. You are not getting that latest kind of software kind of platform, which kind of future-proofs the Fenix 8 a little bit more. You're not getting some of those newer mapping and navigation features, but generally the core experience is very similar. You're not getting those smartwatch features, those kind of voice-enabled ones. And I would say in terms of the core run tracking experience, in terms of the level of battery life, in terms of giving that kind of rugged design, without those kind of dive-proof buttons, the Fenix 7 Pro kind of gives you all that and gives it to you for a lot less money. So, those would be the key reasons to maybe make that upgrade. But I don't think, from a core run tracking experience, there are huge things to make that upgrade for, I think, based on my experience of the two watches. I think from a Fenix 8 AMOLED point of view, you are ultimately looking at the Garmin Epix and Epix Pro. I think, ultimately, I think the big wins or the big differences here are in terms of that kind of improved in terms of that design, that slightly brighter flashlight. I think you are looking obviously at that kind of upgraded kind of software platform as well too. But again, I think the experience of using the Epix Pro compared to the Fenix 8, I think is very similar. I think from a run tracking point of view, from an analysis training point of view, the mapping support is still very good, and you are still getting very good battery life on that as well too. I would personally still be going for the Epix Pro, just because I think, ultimately from a running point of view and having a big watch with an AMOLED display, it still delivers all the kind of things I've seen on the Garmin. And a lot of the new features like the voice enabled features haven't been kind of deal breakers for me. The software changes, it's a similar story as well too. I think the other way to look at it is look into the other kind of Garmin watches. So things like the Enduro 3, which we've been testing as well too. Doesn't have that AMOLED display, but does have huge battery life. All those kind of running, training, analysis features. Doesn't have those voice-enabled features. But again, I don't think those are going to be huge, or be a huge deal for most runners ultimately. And yeah, as I said, if you can live without the AMOLED display, want that huge level of battery life, and a very comfortable big watch to wear, then look at the Enduro 3. There's the Forerunner 965, which obviously isn't as rugged and durable as the Fenix 8. Doesn't have the same level of battery life, doesn't have that new software platform, but ultimately, from a run tracking experience, offers a lot of the same qualities. Has multi-band mode, has mapping and navigation, and that's probably the watch that I would ultimately, go for if I could spend, big on a Garmin watch. I think when you look at smartwatches, I think those kind of outdoor smartwatches are now coming to the forefront. I think, from a Apple Watch Ultra 2 point of view, it is obviously going to give you bigger battery life. Out of the box, it's going to give you more on that mapping navigation support, which you have to search out apps to get the best experience, I think, with the Apple Watch Ultra 2. I think for me, it is a better option than the Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra. Inevitably, you're going to have to spend a you know, more money to get this watch over the Galaxy Watch Ultra, but from a run tracking, mapping, navigation, you know, general training analysis point of view, it's just a step above the Samsung Galaxy Watch Ultra. So outside of Garmin's range, and obviously the smartwatches I've spoken about as well too, I think, you know, you're looking at things like the Prolo Grit X2 Pro. You're also looking at things like the Sunto Race S, the Sunto Vertical, and then from Coros, obviously the Coros Vertix 2, which doesn't have an AMOLED display, but obviously has that kind of outdoor kind of scope to it as well too. If I look at the Polar Grit X2 Pro, I think, you know, a pretty solid watch overall. You know, the Garmin offers better battery life in general. I think as a package, you know, kind of wrapping together kind of training analysis features, I think the Garmin does a bit of a better job. It's a bit of a better smartwatch experience as well too. I think you look at the Sunto, you know, it's obviously more aggressively priced compared to the Garmin's, gives you good AMOLED displays there, good battery life overall as well, and good dual band GPS performance as well too, which we kind of associate with the Garmin as well. Probably again isn't as slick as a smartwatch, and really it's about that package that you're probably lacking compared to the Garmin. But you know, you are making some compromises, but not huge compromises, and you're paying a little bit less money for those watches as well overall. And then the Coros, it's a bit of a similar story. I think you obviously with the Coros, you're getting good, you know, improvements in terms of what we've seen in the Vertix 2S with that GPS kind of performance. The battery life is obviously very strong still, as we kind of, you know, associate with Coros watches, and it's getting to become a better smartwatch. But I think again, it's about that package of the experience and what you're getting overall. And I would ultimately probably still veer for going for something like the Fenix 8 and probably a smaller version of the Fenix 8. So overall, a very good experience with the Fenix 8. I personally would still probably look at going for like the Garmin Epix Pro, because I don't massively, you know, the features that separate those two watches, the Fenix 8 and the Epix Pro, I think wouldn't be deal breakers for me. If I was going for the Fenix 8, I'd be going for a smaller model, ultimately save a little bit of money, still not cheap, but I think you're going to get a very good experience overall and give you the best of what Garmin has to offer ultimately, but at a pretty premium price. Okay, so there you have it, our multi-tester take on the 51mm AMOLED version of the Fenix 8. Now, we will be trying to test some of the other versions as well too, so do keep posted on our reviews over the coming months for those. As always, if you've got any questions, do let us know. Other watches you'd like to know or how it kind of compares to, then do let us know. Hopefully we've covered some of that in this video. As always, like and subscribe, hit that little bell to find out about our latest videos, and yeah, we'll see you for the next Run Testers video.